I've been waiting ages for a good morning of frost where I can get out and try and do some landscape photography, which is quite a nice change for me actually. It's a bit of a change from wildlife. It's sometimes good to have a break. Today's forecast was pretty good again, so I wanted to give it a go, and there is a little bit of frost, but it's not as much as I hoped. I was hoping this whole area would be completely coated in frost. So where I've come to today is it's one of my favourite little places. I just got these mounds of heather, which are all a bit weird. It's apparently like some Roman remains. Nobody's completely sure what it's all about. Maybe doing some quarrying. But what is left is these really quite strange mounds with these tracks going in between them. And it's just all covered in heather, which looks quite bizarre because it's about 10 miles away from Leeds. But it's such a natural looking sight. It looks really quite wild actually. It looks like it's much more further out in the countryside than it actually is. I'm here just after sunrise. The sun's just starting to come up over the hills, and we've got some really lovely broken cloud, and that can give some fantastic light. This is one of those sites where it doesn't work at its best, where it's a completely clear sky, but alternatively I don't particularly want it completely cloudy and flat, but this mixture, broken cloud, I think is going to work well. When you first arrive at the location, it's always a good idea to do a walk round. So even if it's one that you know, you've been to before, it's still worth doing a walk round because every day's different, every season's different, every type of light's different. So I always try and have a good walk, look at everything from different angles before I decide on where I want to take pictures. Oh. Just as much right to be here as you have. Oh god, there's another one I'm getting ganged up on. I actually make quite a good picture. It's really nicely lit. So yeah, I would carry on just talking to the camera, but yeah, I know you just love dogs. There's so many compositions here, it can be really difficult to decide where you want to shoot. And I definitely wanted to do a wider shot, so I've still got that in mind, particularly because you've got these broken clouds, so I'll be able to include that in the shot. Sometimes it's not worth including much sky, but if you've got broken cloud like that, then it's often just as interesting as the landscape itself. But I think so often I'm drawn to the smaller details and like the tighter compositions, isolating smaller sections of the landscape, and this is the case here. So you can see those birch trees behind me, they're just absolutely gorgeous. Love the pattern to them. You have a really lovely winter pattern. I've got the heather in the foreground, which has got a little bit of frost on it, which is going to help lift everything. So I'm really tempted actually just to go for that shot. I'd say there's loads of wide angle shots, but you know what, you just got to go for what you like. If you see something you really love, particularly in landscape and macro photography, if you see something that you absolutely truly love and you want to shoot it, then you should shoot that. Again, it's kind of going on instinct really. So I've just spent a bit of time looking around, because you think it's fairly straightforward, but it never is. But the way the foreground looks is really important to me in this shot. So I've tried a few I've looked at a few variations, and I think I'm going to settle on here, just with this really big patch of foreground heather and those birch trees in the background. I'm going to set up. Now I know what I'm going for. I thought it would probably fit the 50mm lens, the standard lens. I've just tried that and it's just a bit wide really, so it's too much of a wide shot and it's bringing some of the sky into view, which I don't want the sky. So it's going to be a more isolated shot than I first imagined, so I'm going to stick on the 100mm macro and use that one. Just done a quick test shot. It's actually looking pretty good. It's really nice. The sun's just trying to break through, so the quality of light's changing. I imagine this was actually going to be better before any light really hit it, just because it kept that sort of slightly murky atmosphere, which I really liked for the shot. See, that dog was friendly. I've put the lens hood on, A lot of the time I don't really use the hood in landscape photography. Sometimes I've got filters attached, but it's not something I use too often. But I've put it on because that sun is so low and it's shining directly from the side, so there's a good chance of getting some lens flare. I'm using the old style spirit bubble just to keep the horizons level, and I could do it in camera. On this Canon 1DX you can do it in camera to get the horizon level, but I just hate flipping around in live view, constantly pressing the button to get back to where I want to be, so and it drains the battery more. So I have used it. I mean, I do use it occasionally, but yeah, I prefer the old school spirit bubble. 2-second timer. Not bad. Exposure wise, we've got ISO 100. That's just to keep the quality as high as I can. I'm using f16. Now this is a 100mm telephoto lens, which really helps just to isolate that section of the landscape. It just kind of compresses everything, and I'm quite a big fan of that effect. The reason I'm using f16 is because it is quite a narrow depth of field, and the foreground heather is a lot closer than those birch trees are. So I'm using f16 to help the depth of field, but then what I'm doing, I'm just taking 2 shots pretty much. I'm taking 1 shot focusing on the foreground heather, and I'm taking 1 shot focusing exactly on those birch trees, and then I could just merge those 2 together. So I know if I do that, I'll get a perfectly sharp image. Yeah, really happy with that. Really happy with that image. I think this place is just so photogenic. I just love the colour you get here, different times of the year. Even in the winter like now, when, you know, there isn't really much you'd expect to give you colour. But these grasses here are always really bright yellow. I don't entirely know why that is. They're like really, really bright yellow, so you always have some colour in there.
Kites, is it?
Oh no, it's landscape.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I do love red kites.
Some nice landscape around here though.
This is amazing. So this is my wide angle composition. Really nice colourful foreground, those birch trees in the background, and then I've got this path coming through here, adding a curve, and then also there's a little bit of a path that side which is just going into the distance as another curve. So it's really important that I got this curve in the shot. Again, I took a bit of time sort of moving around, deciding exactly where to be. Again, I'm using live view to focus with to get it really accurate. Using the wide angle lens for shots like this, this isn't the sharpest lens in the world, so there's a big difference here between the foreground and the background. So I'm taking 3 shots, I'm focusing on the immediate foreground, then kind of midground, and then birch trees in the distance, and then I can merge those together. I'm actually shooting on f8 as well. I usually shoot around f11 for most of my landscape shots, particularly with this lens, just to try and get a bit more out of it. But I thought I'd try f8 because it might be slightly sharper. So again, using that stacking technique, even at f8, might be a little crisper. Also for this shot I've had to use a filter, so I've got a neutral density graduated filter on here. I didn't use one earlier, the reason being that I had no sky in the shot, so there was no need to. But for this image, the composition that I do want to include a little bit of sky, so I need the graduated filter that tones down the sky to balance it up with the rest of the landscape, otherwise you'll end up with an overexposed sky. So I've gone with a 2-stop hard grad. This is the first time I've tried this filter. I've just got a set of high-tech filters. I don't want to get the really expensive Lee ones. So I've got some high-tech filters, and this is their first outing. So we'll see how they do. Light. Oh crap. Need to put my exposure down a bit. Let's go. Just shield the camera from the sun a bit. And oh, nice. Very nice. Okay, 2 more shots. 1 in the middle, and 1 on the background. Yes, well happy with that. Absolutely gorgeous. The sun literally just popped through for a few seconds, so you've got to take your chances when you can. So I just fired off 3 shots, focusing in 3 different places, and it's gone back in again. Sun is almost fully out now, so I didn't think this was going to look at its best with full sunshine, but it's worth taking a few. So I've just taken another few shots with the full sunlight on it. I'm thinking, you know, whether to use a polarizer. I could try use a polarizer, but I don't know, it looks okay as it is. A polarizer will enhance the contrast, especially as it's side lit. It should really boost that contrast, but you know what? Increasing the contrast isn't necessarily a better thing. And I like it as it is. I'm going to stick with that, I'm going to be bold. No polarizer. Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. It was like a nice break actually. I've been desperately wanting to do some landscape photography, and the conditions have just been so rubbish. Just been very little to do at this time of year in those flat, miserable conditions. But today was much better. So that first shot, I really liked that one. That was the first thing that my eye was drawn to when I came down and did a bit of a walkabout. And I could have gone for the wider shots and the shots that I had in mind before I came down this morning, but I stuck to that because I really liked it. I stuck to that tight composition rather than looking at everything else. Very happy I did that. Really like the atmosphere in that shot with the frost. I think the frost in the foreground heather made that for me, and it was, I don't know, almost like a bit of an impressionistic effect to it, a little bit like a painting. And then the second shot was a bit of a surprise. Just shows that you just have to go with the conditions. You know, whatever the conditions do, just go where that takes you and try and find a composition that suits those weather conditions. And because we had a bit of light, a bit of winter sunlight coming through, I think it was just really helping to lift that colour in the foreground. So thanks very much for watching the video. If you're not subscribed, do consider subscribing to the channel for lots of nature photography videos and watching me in hides and crawling around on the ground and getting attacked by dogs. So if you feel like sharing on social media, that would be massively appreciated as well. So from this absolutely beautiful wild looking landscape that is incredibly close to the city centre, I will see you somewhere in nature sometime soon. Oh crap. That was the ankle I sprained as well. More chemtrails.